attend tonight. First, we ask that you rename yourself so that your full name is visible. This is helpful to everyone. Second, we ask you to kindly refrain from posting, sharing comments, or asking questions in the chat. We will be using the chat to share Ms. Donohue's bio, the link to the job description, these working principles, and other documents that might be helpful in this process. Our structure today will be as follows. Ms. Donohue will provide a 20 to 25-minute presentation based on a prompt from the search committee. Then we will have 45 minutes of questions from anyone in this audience. This part will be moderated by Kofi Akri. To ask a question, we kindly ask that you raise your digital hand and also have your cameras on. We will take the questions in the order of the hands. Please wait to speak until Kofi calls on you. Your question should be directly related and confined to the presentation and to the job description that has been posted in the chat. Please do not make comments or statements. You should just ask a question. Please keep your questions short so that we can ensure everyone on this Zoom has an opportunity to participate. If your question is long, know that we will intervene and ask you to shorten. We kindly ask that you do not engage in follow-up questions or conversations with Ms. Donohue following her response to your questions, as our time is short and we are dedicated to providing space to as many people as possible during the second half of this session. I now would like to introduce Sue Perlgut, the other co-chair of the search committee. Thank you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm so pleased to introduce Kate and hear her remarks. We asked her to speak to why she's interested in joining Cinemapolis, but first, actually, I'm supposed to tell you her bio, which I am going to do right now. Kate Donohue has worked as a nonprofit consultant and executive for over 15 years. She is also an artist, educator, and resident of Ithaca. Kate has won over $20 million in new grant funding. She has managed large teams of staff and a department budget of $2.8 million. In her 6 years of living in Ithaca, she has gotten to know the rich local landscape of cultural and educational institutions. She believes Cinemapolis has a vital role to play in Central New York, connecting people to film's unique power to expand our empathy and our view of the world. So now I'm pleased to introduce her, and we asked her to speak to why she's interested in joining Cinemapolis as the executive director, and as an executive director, to please describe the tactics and relevant experience that she would bring to Cinemapolis in order to accomplish the following goals. 1, increase revenue to the theater via grants, soft money. 2, ticket sales at the theater. 3, fostering relationships with members and patrons. And finally, to discuss what she sees and imagines as the future of nonprofit first-run theatrical film exhibition. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much. Let me share my screen. I want to thank everyone for joining tonight, and be patient for just a moment while I get my presentation on the screen. There we go. It is such a pleasure to be speaking to everyone tonight. There are, as you heard, a few questions that I have to answer as a part of this presentation. First of all, I have to explain, why do I want this job? And there are a few points I want to note as my answer to this. Number one, I have worked in the nonprofit sector for a long time, and I treasure that work. Nonprofits are a space where people can work creatively and collaboratively to generate new ideas and bring those ideas to fruition. I treasure the opportunities to engage in that work, and I would really look forward to doing it at specifically this nonprofit, Cinemapolis. Reasons that attract me to working as part of a nonprofit, independent, first-run theater is that I am, as you heard, an artist, and I'm very interested in connecting people to transformative experiences with art. I am also an Ithacan, so I have a sense of what the landscape is that Cinemapolis exists within. There are lots of opportunities to engage with culture within this area, but Cinemapolis offers something special and unique. I see it as a crucial part of the cultural and also economic landscape of this community. Lastly, I am pursuing this job because I feel that I'm ready for it. I understand that the role of executive director is an enormous responsibility. And I also recognize that there are challenges that Cinemapolis faces, but I have developed the ability to work well in partnership with other people, to make effective decisions as a leader, and to make a compelling case on behalf of organizations. And these skills, I feel certain, have prepared me to succeed within this role and help Cinemapolis thrive as we move forward. I am largely going to be talking about my vision for the future of Cinemapolis. I want to start, however, by talking about an experience from my past that I think was very formative in shaping how I think about how nonprofits can effectively navigate change. When I first spoke to the search committee, we touched briefly on the fact that this is a moment of existential change for movie theaters. And it reminded me of an experience I had when I started at a large nonprofit in New York City in October of 2008. And if you look at that chart that you see in front of you, that moment when the Dow Jones Industrial Average plummets was the very same moment that I arrived in the office saying, like, I'm here to help you raise money. And my coworkers, whom I came to cherish, informed me that all of the sources of money that had, so many of the sources of funding that had been in place had evaporated very, very quickly. So much life has happened since 2008 that it is hard to remember the reality of that moment and what it felt like. It was a difficult moment of crisis. And having been forged in that fire, I learned many things. Most importantly is this: key to navigating moments of challenge and change is remaining focused on your organization's mission, clearly understanding what that mission is, and preventing drift from what is most important for you to accomplish as an organization. At that time, many people were informing nonprofits, you need to do things new, and you need to do things that are new and different. You need to think creatively. And there was a usefulness in that advice, but it comes with a caveat, and it is this: new and creative ideas are wonderful when they emanate from the mission rather than distract from it. So this gives you a kind of background on my perspective on how to manage organizations effectively and face moments of change effectively. I'm going to talk now about specific ideas I have on how to support increased financial stability for Cinemapolis, to support growth in a couple key areas. You see here a kind of three-part vision that I want to discuss. I'm going to explain how I envision marketing in ways that are strategic and intentional and effectively reaching new audiences. I'm also going to talk about pursuing grants, and you'll see here film education is highlighted. There are many kinds of grants I think are positioned to attain in Cinemapolis. I see a particular advantage in pursuing this area of supporting our film exhibitions with film education. That is not the only programmatic area that I would support through grants, but I think it is an area to prioritize, and I want to explain why I see it that way. And I also am going to talk briefly about kind of my vision for events, how I see events as functioning for Cinemapolis in terms of generating revenue, but even more importantly, establishing and affirming our identity as an organization. So moving forward to speak specifically about marketing, I've laid out here a few key marketing strategies and examples of one tactic that I can imagine implementing in support of this broader strategy. Extremely important to the long-term sustainability of Cinemapolis and any organization is to attract an audience that represents broad age demographics specifically. Broad demographics in many ways, but thinking about age in terms of marketing, I think is essential. So I've listened to the radio in Ithaca occasionally and heard ads for Cinemapolis and thought like, oh, that popcorn is delicious. I want to go there. I've seen ads flashing on the Ithaca Voice, and I think these are potentially important ways to conduct outreach. But I also think it's important to think about who might not be encountering those ads on those platforms. My example in terms of broad demographic reach, one important platform I think for Cinemapolis to have a presence on is TikTok. And there are a few reasons for that. It is a kind of ascendant social media platform right now, and it is becoming particularly important for younger social media users. It is also a platform that feeds into other platforms. So it's possible to create content for TikTok and have a widespread impact as it shows up on Instagram and elsewhere. I also think it's worth noting that as a social media platform that is focused on short films, there's a kind of sync with Cinemapolis's identity as an organization, so it makes sense to have an active, intentional presence on in that space. I can envision something like a fun TikTok video where we talk about how to navigate through the construction to actually find our way to Cinemapolis's door. And that's an instance where a piece of social media content can reach a broad demographic and can turn an obstacle into a kind of opportunity, a chance to create some piece of shareable content that is memorable and fun. We live in a world where marketing can be very mission focused and also interactive, and I'm interested in opportunities for that. So much of what we love about film is the conversation that surrounds film. I would love and it's possible that work like this has been done in Cinemapolis, but I've not been exposed to it. I would love to create opportunities for sharing publicly film criticism. And I'm guessing that many of you understand that I mean not like, I love the movie, I didn't love the movie, but instead reflections on the experience of viewing a movie, the reflections of that movie's, how it's speaking to our current moment. Sharing that publicly and creating a forum where people can respond to those comments and share their own criticism and thoughts. So people could be drawn into the theater, not just for the experience we're offering in the theater, but for the opportunity to join that conversation. In our marketing, we need to be very strategic in responding to what's happening in our local area. We talked briefly in my initial conversation with the search committee about the fact that exciting opportunity for Cinemapolis is that there are new apartment buildings opening and there will be new downtown residents. We need to be very intentional about encouraging our new neighbors to create a habit of coming to Cinemapolis. We need to position Cinemapolis as a perk of living downtown. So that could be something like having special screenings where people can come to see a movie and meet some of their neighbors. It could be something like discounted tickets for people who have moved in recently. There's a lot of varieties that could take, but we need to be intentional and responsive. I'm going to move now to talking about grants. I have done many things in my career. I have submitted and won many, many grants. And one of the things that has given me is an understanding of a particularly compelling grant ask. As I've said, there are many elements of the work that Cinemapolis does that I can imagine attracting grant funding. I think we are so well positioned to establish partnerships around specifically film education that we should take advantage of those leverage points. I can envision partnerships with organizations where we complement the work they're doing by using our space, our resources, our expertise. And through partnerships, we are able to access new audiences. Part of accessing those new audiences can be equipping those new audiences with enhanced film literacy that will really enable people to develop a positive, transformative, lifelong relationship with film. Another point that I want to emphasize about the importance of partnerships that can be grant funded is this. As a cultural institution, an independent movie theater has to contend with the perception that these cultural spaces are in some way exclusionary or elite, that they leave people out in some way. Reaching out to new audiences through partnerships is an important way to break down barriers and welcome people into the theater who might otherwise not feel the same sense of belonging. But so we can kind of create opportunities for ourselves to intentionally foster that wide-reaching sense of belonging. Those are some programmatic considerations I wanted to highlight in talking about pursuing grants. I also want to talk about some financial considerations. I'm a big believer in mastering the fundamentals of financial management with nonprofit organizations. Grants are a really important area where you have to do that. You have to design effective budgets. You also have to be very careful to pursue grant opportunities specifically that fund indirect costs. And if people need me to explain more of that, I'm welcome to do that as we have questions. Largely, I want to say this. An organization should not exist to work in the service of a grant. Rather, grants have to support the work that an organization is committed to doing. And part of effectively raising money through grants is designing budgets. And part of the work is actually saying no to opportunities that do not serve the organization. That's a few important bullet points about my thinking about grants and specifically where I see opportunities in grants for Cinemapolis. I am now going to briefly talk about how I think about events. I was doing a lot of words. We needed some fun images. This is kind of like my vision board for events for Cinemapolis. When I talk to organizations about events, I often caution them against thinking about events as a central tool in fundraising, because often events are a much more labor-intensive way to fundraise than other opportunities like soliciting donations or seeking grant funding. But Cinemapolis is an event space, and we need to host a variety of events to kind of cultivate our organizational identity, essentially our brand within this community. And as we're doing that, I think it's really important that people are coming to Cinemapolis and having experiences that foster this kind of dual vision, where we are a place where they are coming to learn and to grow through encounters with film. And we're also a place where they're coming to have fun. Those are some points about how I see ways we can attract revenue and also new audience members. I realized that as an executive director, an important part of my job would also be strengthening existing bonds with members and patrons. A few key points about how I would approach that. This is certainly not necessarily true of all Cinemapolis attendees, audience members, but I feel a strong sense that many people who come to Cinemapolis are coming not just for the experience of watching and enjoying films, but because that experience is fueling their own creative practice in some way. If you go to the Spring Rights Literary Festival and you go to a screenwriting workshop, it's packed. And that to me is a data point that is important to a local independent theater, important for a local independent theater to respond to in some ways. I feel like supplementing film experiences with other opportunities for people to be creative would be really appreciated and engaging for people. It could be something like screenwriting workshops or discussion groups around creative practices related to film. There's lots of possibilities, but I think tapping into that creative energy is important. A kind of creative act is just offering really meaningful feedback to the organization and trusting that that feedback will be taken seriously. And that's really important in terms of engaging people who support this organization. I like to joke that there are multiple ways you can seek feedback within a nonprofit. Sometimes there is that thing where we say, like, fill out the survey and check this box if you liked this experience. And if you really, really love this experience, you can check this box. But there's other kinds of efforts where you can genuinely seek to hear from people about what they valued, what they see as missing, and put that into action. I also think it's always important to recognize that there are going to be really vocal members of a community, and you certainly want to hear them, but you also want to seek out those people who might not naturally be the squeaky wheel. It is really important that Cinemapolis responds to our local culture and community. One beautiful example of how we do that is the existing partnership with the Finger Lakes Environmental Film Festival. When I hear that, I think to myself, like, that's so Ithaca, that's so Central New York. And I mean it in this way that is proud and affectionate for this community. And I feel like the creation of those kinds of moments of connection with this local area are really important, and Cinemapolis can be a space for that. I think a really important way to connect with members and patrons is simply to be attentive to how we're curating the film selection. We need to offer broadly appealing options and also challenging options. We need to respond to interests that we know are present and also incorporate new voices and new ideas. That to me is a keystone in maintaining engagement. So those points have been specifically about the future of Cinemapolis. I'm going to speak now about the future broadly of nonprofit, independent, first-run theaters. There is a central challenge of this moment. Simply put, independent theaters used to be the place to see the movies that we show, and that is no longer the case. However, we remain a vital resource. A theme for me in understanding the role that independent theaters play is this idea of connections. We still have an important role to play in connecting filmmakers to audiences. Filmmakers can access large audiences through streaming sites. However, it is important to note that accessing an audience and building an audience are two different things. I speak from my own experience when I'm sitting at home with all of these cultural resources available to me on my television. I feel decision fatigue. And in that environment in my home, as someone who wants to challenge myself and have these encounters with great art, I am very prone to pick instead something that is easy and comfortable and familiar. Cinemapolis and other independent theaters help separate the signal from the noise, help really beautiful, important films build an audience and get the attention that they deserve and need. One important point within the work of Cinemapolis is our role as a site to see international films. So we all understand that we live within a global community, but noting that as a fact and truly feeling it as a reality are very different things. Film has this enormous power to shape empathy. And as an independent theater, we have a unique opportunity to center marginalized voices. All of those are opportunities that are vitally important, that we need to preserve and allow to continue to enrich this community and the broader media ecosystem. We are a small part of this global network of media and arts and economic interests that produce movies. But we need to recognize the very real importance of the role we play within that system. As we are part of this global system, we are also a really important part, as I've said, of the local community. And as a local independent movie theater, Cinemapolis has a really important role to play in connecting people to this local area and to each other. Talking about films, debating about films has been a key part of how we socialize, how we talk to each other for a really long time. When we go to the movie theater, we sit alone, or we sit quietly in the dark with others. But there are connections that are formed there. And it is our role to celebrate and to strengthen those bonds. As executive director, that would be my mission, and I would be very excited to take up that mission. I thank you all so much for listening to my presentation, and I look forward to talking more. So I've unshared my screen. I think our next move is to hear questions.
I had to take my mute off. I'm up here talking and I don't have my mute on. Let me first, I want to do some stuff in terms of some ground rules, so to speak. So while I'm doing that, folks can generate questions that they may want to ask, and I'll let you know how we're going to handle that. In talking to Kate earlier, I asked her, and she said she definitely we can call her Kate. So there's no disrespect by me saying Kate. This is what she said. So my name is Kofi Akri. I'm currently the director of the John Henry Clark Africana Library, and I'm also the curator for Africana Collections for the Division of Rare and Manuscript Collections at Cornell. That's where all the cool old stuff is, like the Gettysburg Address and this, that, and the other thing. I'm here tonight, however, as a member of the search committee for the open position that Kate just gave a presentation about. I will be monitoring the Q&A of this section of the presentation talk tonight. There are certain things I want everybody to take in consideration. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand electronically through the Zoom mechanisms. Once that is done, I will be calling on people in the role that I see the hand raised, because if you raise the hand, it automatically moves your image up to the top because I can't see all 22 images on one screen. Given the time frame and us trying to get as many voices as possible and people asking questions, I ask you to keep your questions brief. Also ask you to keep the questions directed towards a presentation or the job description that my colleague Patty has posted through the chat. Once this is all over, also, I wanted to say too, we want to hold off on follow-up questions until everybody is basically has a chance to ask a question. And finally, we also want your input, folks on this call. We will be emailing a link to a survey so we can get better input in terms of what you think about the candidate. This will only be viewed by the search committee, and we will take these in consideration. Before I call on the first person, I want to ask a question. That's the moderator's prerogative. So here it is. Kate, you made an opening statement where you said that the theater was an important aspect of the landscape of Ithaca. Could you elaborate on that? What do you really mean by that?
Sure. I mean, there are lots of cultural and entertainment options within downtown. We have the State Theater, there are readings happening, not downtown, but at the, colleges locally. But the daily opportunity to do something fun and entertaining downtown is, I think, really important to that area. And it also intersects with local businesses and also local, housing developments. It is a point that attracts people to this area. I was thinking about the experience of having a visitor come and see me here, and we went on a hike in the morning, and then we went to Cinemapolis to see a movie in the evening. And she was like, we can do both of those things. Like we have these different kinds of experiences that are available. And Cinemapolis is an important part of that arts and cultural piece. And so preserving that and kind of expanding its reach, I think is vital, not just to the organization itself, but to the surrounding community.
Thank you so much. I want to call on my colleague, Allison Anderson. Go for it, Allison.
Hi, Kate.
Hello.
Can you please tell us about a film that is on your all-time favorites list?
Sure. I watched this movie because it was listed by Ryan Johnson as one of his favorite movies, and I've loved his work for a while. He said that the movie Slapshot was a really important movie for him. And it was such a remarkable experience seeing this movie somewhat recently, because I went into it not knowing anything about it. And I was like, is this a silly sports movie? What is this? And it was an instance where it's difficult to watch in some ways. And because people are not being very nice to each other, there's difficult, interactions that are being depicted. You don't always love all of the characters, but it was such a powerful depiction to me about life in capitalism, and all, like, the way that people can be dehumanized by encounters with wealth and power. And it was such a powerful testament to what it means to fight, to hold on to a sense of your humanity and the messiness of that. That movie to me was a reminder of how important it is to kind of stick it out through challenging movie moments, because I really was about to be like, let's turn this off. And I was like, no, let's fight through it. And it has been seared in my mind and my heart since I watched it. And I sort of became obsessed with reading about what inspired the writer to create it, and Paul Newman, who starred in it, his discussions of what it was like to play that role and curse and use disturbing language for the first time in a movie, how it transformed him and that character stayed with him forever. So that was a somewhat recent movie encounter to me that really reminded me of why I love seeing films and how they can stay with you and continue to affect how you see the world.
not seeing a question of anybody, because I do have another question, but I want to give everybody an opportunity. Daniel, how you doing, sir? You are up next.
Hi, my name is Dan Kiley. I'm one of the employees of Cinemapolis. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you will utilize the day-to-day employees to further, what you hope to accomplish with the cinema.
So I think that anybody who's working in a nonprofit, a part of recognizing the value of the work that you do is giving you a chance to voice your vision for the organization and what you want to see more of. I was, I think, very lucky to work for a long time in an organization where the organizational leadership really welcomes feedback, including critical feedback. And I, as an employee, always felt empowered to voice my opinions. And I would want to create that kind of working environment for everybody who is part of the Cinemapolis team. I also see any organizational leader's role as being in part ensuring that the organization operates smoothly, that there are no operational barriers to you doing the work you need to do. I want to kind of clear the way for you to have the best experience you can at your job and do the best work you can do. And in addition to hearing from you about the large scale vision of the organization, I also want to hear about how I can support you in that. I feel like recognizing the importance of operational effectiveness is a way to recognize the importance of the people who work within the organization. And that, to me, is absolutely essential in a leader.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the board for letting us be a part of this.
Oh, you better believe it, Dan. So that was a good answer there. I guess not supposed to be judgmental in this, but I'm like airtime for the questions. I do have a question, but I'll let Andrew ask his first and give him the floor. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, Kate, for your presentation. I'm a patron of Cinemapolis, but my interest also comes from being film professor up at Ithaca College. And so I'm very interested to hear about how you would foster collaboration with academic institutions and to broaden it, because I know the job description talks about collaborations with local businesses and other cultural organizations. So those types of connections.
Sure. So I think that I want to hear from professors and from other stakeholders about what you feel is missing and what you can provide to your students and your community, and how Cinemapolis can enrich what you're able to offer. I think actually being just the opportunity to see movies in a theater space is really, really valuable to people who are studying theater. I also think that anybody who wants to study art and make art, it's really important to think about the economic realities that inform the creation and distribution of that art. And Cinemapolis is a really powerful case study in those realities. So I think there's opportunities to learn about those factors for students at local colleges and beyond. I think there are. I think that part of, I have ideas, but I also know that part of it, especially a new executive director, has to be ready to listen. So that question of what do you need that we have, and how can we work together towards shared goals, is a really important one, and one I would be very excited to have. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kate. We have Marley and then David right after her. Thank you. Go ahead, Marley. Thank you.
Hi, Kate. I was hoping you could speak to what diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace means to you and how you plan to demonstrate in the workplace. Thank you.
Sure. Great question. I think that commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion has to permeate all levels of operations of an organization and how we talk to our to potential audience members, how we talk to people who and interact with people who come into this to the theater, how we collaborate as an internal team. And I think that when people talk about DEI, they often talk about language and words we say and words we don't say, but there has to be a much deeper commitment to that. And what that really means to me is a kind of continual interrogation of our practices in our organization. So not just, doing a diversity seminar like once a year, but on something authentic and ongoing, where we are continually asking questions about who might not feel welcome in this space and why, and how can we do more to welcome them into the space? How can we truly represent? I talked a lot in my presentation about representing this community, and part of that work is understanding the diversity of this community and that there is not one story about what is so Ithaca or what is so Central New York. There are very many stories, and we have to continually renew that commitment to centering historically marginalized voices, currently marginalized voices, and not just talk about a commitment, but really embody it.
Thank you so much, Kate. We have David and then Sue's on deck.
Hi, Kate. I would like to ask you, describe the methods and practices you would utilize to meet deadlines.
Ooh, good question. So one thing I want to say about that question is specifically about grants. A really common place for a grant opportunity to die is in the inbox of an executive director. And I say that not as criticism of anyone, but the fact is that there's a lot of information to manage when you are managing a grant schedule and managing an organization. So creating systems that enable you to respond to the influx of information that comes at you very quickly, and a lot of it's not useful, but some of it's really important, that is essential. So creating those systems for myself and also for the organization, like thinking about the nitty-gritty details of how we get things done and how we can get things done in the most efficient way. I want to provide some specific examples because deadlines are really important in terms of specifically generating funds for nonprofits. Almost never do you work 100% on your own on any project that has a deadline. You're always working in teams with other people. So communicating to others when you need specific information, making it very clear what you need from them, and also communicating why it is essential helps everyone work together to meet deadlines effectively. You also have to prioritize. So that act of understanding what work needs to get done immediately and what really can be tabled to tomorrow is also important. It's a role where there are a lot of simultaneous demands, and the act of prioritizing is essential, because if you don't do that, you will drown in it, I think. So clear communication, prioritization, and also creating systems that allow the most effective work are all essential for meeting deadlines.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I just want to get a time check. We got plenty of time left. It's 7:45. Next up will be Sue, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you. Go ahead, Sue.
I lost internet for a while, so I don't know if this question was asked or not. So if it was, just tell me and don't answer it. So I'm interested in, and you're talking about events, and to talk about events more as outreach and less as fundraising.
Yes, I think that I talked about Cinemapolis as being key to helping filmmakers kind of cut through the competition and noise. I think having really exciting, appealing events that will generate interest in the community and get people in the space are really important for helping people kind of develop the habit of going to Cinemapolis, feeling that connection to the organization, and kind of putting it into their rotation of, you know, it's part of how I want to spend my week, spend my leisure time. There is a lot of effort that goes into a fundraiser, and there's a kind of complicated calculus that sometimes comes out where if you're really trying to raise a significant amount of money rather than just generate interest, the kind of cost benefit analysis is something that you have to be careful about and think strategically about. But I think if we are using the resources at our disposal to create something interesting and exciting, to make it a day when people really want to be at Cinemapolis, that's a different kind of goal. And that I think is really important.
Thank you, Kate. Next up will be Jody, and on deck is Carmen. Thank you, Jody.
Hi,
Judy.
I'm Jody, past president of the board at Cinemapolis, and then after 13 years, I'm back. So my question for you is, and this could be, it's not verified, this is my experience, that films seem to be an older person's game. Or is it just the films I'm seeing? I see all the white heads in there and all the people, they say 50 and over. I liked your discussion of having different events there. So I'm wondering if you got a couple ideas for events that bring in youth or younger people. And by that, I mean people in their 20s, college age, 30s, 20s and 30s, young adults.
So that's a nice segue of, I think on events, that I was just talking about events, like the focus of events not being like, we're going to have a big fundraiser, like a gala, rather than thinking about these like kind of high pressure events, rather thinking about creating something that will be specifically appealing to people in their 20s who are here, or, you know, so I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but for whatever reason, Whitney Houston is like really having a moment right now. And the movie about Whitney Houston is coming out right now. And there's a lot of interest in people, like the music that I happen to grow up with, like with Whitney, like there's a lot of energy and love for Whitney Houston right now. And like that kind of opportunity is a way to attract, I think, a younger audience. I also think that like there are younger people who are going to Cinemapolis to see some of the anime films that are there, but there might be more. Like there might be more people who are connected to that kind of community and can kind of congregate with friends at Cinemapolis that we can attract and sort of talk about this art form. I think it is, I'm interested in like people who are in their 30s and 40s getting to the movies, because it's hard to do when you're in that age group, and I would love to do more of it myself. So I think about creating programming that is working around people's schedules and some of the constraints that get in the way of enjoying some of these things that they want to enjoy in the community. You know, honestly, I grew up going to the movies and loving that experience. And I have so much more fun when I go to Ithaca, to Cinemapolis, than I do when I go to Regal Cinema. I don't want to hate on Regal Cinema right now, but it's a better experience to go to Cinemapolis for a lot of reasons. And there are people for whom the experience of going to the movies was really important to them when they were younger, that I think would want to get back into doing it. And we can offer this beautiful space where they are able to do that. And just articulating that memory and the joys of that experience in a way that really reaches that audience is important. Social media is a way to do it. Also, creating mini committees where people can shape events that we have and also conduct outreach to their own networks to attract people to the theater. Those strategies, I think, are useful.
Thank you, Kate. I guess I should do full disclosure. We also want to be able to bring a sense of belonging to this Q&A. So I'm looking for more people to participate within it. Full disclosure, as our last speaker or questionnaire said, that coming back to the board, I am as well. I was on the board for a long time. I'll be coming back to the board, I don't know, the next calendar year or something of that nature. I had a lot of experience doing programming, so I look forward to joining the board back. So now we have Carmen up, and then Lynn is after that. Go ahead, Carmen.
Hi, how are you? My question is, well, first I want to identify that I'm a staff member of Cinemapolis, and I've been there about 3 years. And I was wondering what your specific team building strategies would be on how to boost employee morale and to have us work effectively as a team to help you in your new role.
Great question. I think that I want to say a couple things about team building and working effectively as a staff. So number one, if there are issues with morale, I think understanding the underlying issues that are causing that people to feel discouraged is really important, and doing everything in my power to address those underlying issues is the first step. And being open as a leader to, hearing about what challenges exist and demonstrating to everyone my commitment to forming, to addressing that. In terms of team building, I actually think that it is important to take some time for people to be together when they're not working. And I'm not necessarily talking about going out for drinks after work necessarily. It's it is useful time to spend in a room checking in, really getting to know each other on a more personal, or just that idea of check-in is, I think, important. How are you doing? Let me hear from you. Let me talk about how I'm doing, and let's be honest and solution oriented as we talk about, sort of our experiences working in this organization. I also think that if you're working at Cinemapolis, you are interested in films, you are driven by some real passion. And I, as an organizational leader, want to allow you to pursue that and foster that. In nonprofits, I can't pay everyone $1 million. We can't, that's not an option. I would buy everybody a yacht if I could. But since that's not on the table, I need to be very attentive to what brings you to this work, what fuels your passion, and allow that to shine. I spoke about this in my first conversation with the search committee. The best manager I ever had, her superpower was she recognized what people were really good at and gave them opportunities to do that. And I saw that have transformative, really positive effects at the organization where I worked. And I have tried to model my own approach to management on that. Obviously, if there is feedback that I need to give that is critical, I'm responsible for doing that, and I'm not afraid to do that. But recognizing the contributions of people and the potential of people to shine is, I think, so important. And part of my job is to be kind of a partner to you in helping the organization thrive, but also I want to talk to people who work at Cinemapolis and say, you know, like, where do you want to go in this role, and what do you want to do next, and how can I work with you to achieve these long-term goals?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. We have two more people up. I just want to interrupt for one moment and remind everybody that after this presentation, we will be sending out through email a link about a survey. And because I know not everybody will be able to talk right now, sometimes you think about it later on. So now we have Lynn and then Enrique. You're up after that. Go ahead, Lynn. Thank you so much for participating.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I was once the director of Cinemapolis, or co-director. I retired 10 years ago, and I'm still a frequent moviegoer, and I have been sad to see that Cinemapolis still seems to be affected by COVID. It's still kind of dragging its ass in terms of how many showings it has a day, and that gets back to Jody's question. We always found that the students came to the late shows, and there aren't any late shows now. So I'm hoping that Cinemapolis will be able to be restored fully. That's all.
So what is your question, Lynn?
Oh, it was an observation. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Kate, you
Maybe
have-
we could turn that into a question then, you know,
Okay.
because you are a very important stakeholder.
Yes,
you
I
know a
know.
little bit, a little something there. So just looking at what Lynn shared with us, which is really some sage, some advice. How would you deal with a post-COVID environment? You know, because it had an effect on us in so many different ways. You look at downtown, it looks a little different than the way it did before. So how would you function within this environment post-COVID? If it is one, I don't know, we may still be going through it, but you get the gist, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think messaging is really important, you know, communicating honestly that's been a reality for the organization, that we are still getting back into a groove, and this stage that we are with the pandemic. I think that so creating messaging that is inviting and saying, like, come back to the movies, come back and see us, you know, like being kind of transparent and being like, we're here, remember, come on. And I'm kidding a little bit, but I think there's some truth in that. I think targeted outreach is really important, you know, creating programming and putting on blast that exists, that is going to be really appealing to people. And also thinking about what barriers that exist that are kind of keeping people away. Jody, you mentioned the time of showings, and I think that's really important to consider, using data to kind of think about what showings are going to be most attractive for people, and, you know, what who are we leaving out if we're not including showings at this time. All of that is really important. I don't want to make any promises about what is or isn't feasible, because we need to look at that data. We need to look at the budget, staffing patterns, all of it, and see what is the most feasible and what is sort of the best return on investment in terms of attracting audience members. But yes, designing messaging and designing programming that breathes new life into the organization feels really necessary right now.
Thank you so much, Kate. Enrique, I think you're up next, and then we're coming up on 8 PM, so we're coming at the end. Kate, have you taken a sip of water or a liquid?
I did have one. I did have one.
This might be a little Tommy.
water.
You okay? Okay, Ricky, you up. Thank you, sir.
Hello, Kate, and thank you for your presentation. I had a question about your vision for collaboration with smaller film festivals. You mentioned the Finger Lakes Environmental Film Festival, which is probably the biggest festival in town. But I'm the director of the Latino Cine con Cultura Film Festival. And I know there are other smaller festivals happening in town, like the Fantastic Fest and a couple of years ago, the Asian and Asian American Film Festival. And so what do you envision in the future?
So those kinds of partners, I mentioned the Finger Lakes Festival. I certainly did not mean to exclude your film festival, Enrique. But I do see those partnerships as being essential to fulfilling the mission of Cinemapolis, of tapping into that creative energy within the community, and also of representing the truly being a welcoming, inclusive, truly representative institution. So my vision is that we need to work closely together, and we need to talk about how to work in synergy to achieve mutual goals. I think those conversations we can come up with sort of creative solutions to the challenges we face together. And I think we can feed into the work we're both trying to accomplish.
Thank you. This has been a really enlightening conversation we're having with you. Just looking for more questions. Just out of curiosity, what are you getting out of these conversations that you're having with this community today?
One thing I would say is that I think about sort of the first step of stepping into the role of executive director as going on what I would call a listening tour, and hearing from people about potential for the future of Cinemapolis, potential collaborations, and as well as challenges that exist. And I'm sensing the fact that there are many people ready to provide really valuable input. I think that an executive director wears many hats and can't have all the answers. It is heartening to see the fact that there are many people with expertise and a commitment to the mission of Cinemapolis who would be available to provide useful input.
Thank you. My buddy Nicole, how you doing, Nicole? Long time no see. Good to see you. This is a call for other questions because we're about soon ready to wrap up. And but we're going to turn it over to Nicole. Go for it. Thank you.
Oh, hey. Hi, Kate. I want to hear about your superpower. You talked about that a little bit of your former employer. And so I would love to hear, what is that one thing that you do that you're proud of? And how would that be related to an initiative or program that you would bring to the institution to enhance it, that maybe you're already aware of, that you've seen, and you know, this is the one thing when I saw this job that I want to go there and do, and I know I can do it and I can do it well.
I think this is what I have gotten to be really good at over the years. I love being in a room with people at a moment when we're trying to come up with a vision, with a new idea, when there's a lot of thoughts percolating and we need to synthesize those thoughts into a clear vision. I am thrilled by those moments, and I've gotten good at listening and synthesizing, saying, this is what I'm hearing, and this is how to transform this from a nascent percolating idea into a clear, actionable goal. So that is what happens on like the big picture level, but I am also invested in translating that into ground level reality, of moving from vision to it's actually happening. And we're thinking not just about the underlying philosophy, but like the nitty gritty details that we need to actually make this work. And I feel like big picture, small details, that move is a really important move to be able to make as an executive director. And it would be a really exciting move to be making within this world of Cinemapolis, working, not alone, but as part of this community to come up with exciting new ideas and then actually to implement them, to bring them to life.
Fantastic. We are running out of time. We do have time for another question if anyone wants to ask, but we don't have to either, because Kate, you have given us so much of your time today. And on behalf of the search committee, I really want to thank you. There's a full day for Kate tomorrow, where she has an itinerary of various different things that will happen. You have the contact information for the search committee chair. So I encourage you, if you have any additional questions, Kate, is to directly reach out to them with regard to their itinerary tomorrow. Last call for questions. Anybody? Daniel, how you doing, sir? The floor is yours.
This isn't actually a question. I just know that you folks are going to the theater tomorrow, and I just wanted to remind you all that the cleaners are there tomorrow starting at noon. So you're going to have like 15 people come into the theater at about noon.
So no popcorn or anything like that? Just...
No, I didn't know if you knew that it got cleaned tomorrow. So I just didn't want you to be surprised when a bunch of people walked in with vacuums.
So Daniel, I got a question for you. What film is playing at Cinemapolis that you would encourage people to see tomorrow over the weekend?
The Banshees of Inisherin, when I watched it, became automatically one of my top 10 films of all time. It was kind of shooting fish in a barrel for me. I'm an actor, and Martin McDonagh is a playwright and a screenwriter. Right. And Brendan Gleeson is my favorite actor. So it would have been hard for me to really hate this movie, but it was it was nigh perfect. The entire thing is an allegory about the Civil War, when Home Rule and the real IRA began fighting. So it works as that allegory, but it also works just as the film, which is unbelievably sad. But then again, so is Ireland. Thank you.
But could you repeat that again? Because I think I had plans for Saturday now. What's the name of that film?
You're gonna want to watch The Menu.
Okay, got it. All right. I think we're at an end, and what a proper way to end it with Daniel telling us about a film that he's encouraging us to go see. We will be reconvening another time, but I want to thank everybody on this call for chiming in, for viewing. And again, just one last reminder, we will gather the email, contact information, and email out the survey. Kate, thank you for your time. Search committee members, thank you for your time. Board members, and also our stakeholders, thank you for coming. And see you at the movies.